Hello, hello, hey guys. Merry holidays. How's it going? Today we're finally doing it. Finally doing the knight versus bishop, or bishop versus knight, is how I'm gonna approach it today. Uh, Endgame session. After so long promising I would do it. Um, yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot of chess today. Hopefully, not only today, because the topic is so broad that I think I'm going to split it in several sessions, probably like four of them, but we will see how it goes. Um, Cheers, everyone. For those of you celebrating Christmas, happy Christmas Eve. I hope you have a wonderful time. And yeah, for those of you here today, be as interactive as you want. I'm gonna try and answer all the questions. Otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube, well, you can still put your comments under the video, and I will try my best to address every uh, question and or suggestion. And we can always do more sessions. That's fine. So let's go to my studies and find this bishop versus knight. Sorry, my hat is a bit uncomfortable with the headset. All right. Let me know if everything's all right in the screen. If you can see the board, you can hear me well. I'm not gonna put any background music today because I want this to be on YouTube, available for everyone, and so I don't want any kind of funny business of Twitch muting it or anything. Uh, so you're gonna have to bear with my voice. Everything well? Too bad, no good music. Yeah, I I know. I'm sorry. Well, other times in the past I've done it, and even it's tricky. You can find some non-copyright music, but it's not always um, doesn't make doesn't ensure that 100% of the time it won't give a false positive. So yeah, I will just not bother about it. I'm sorry about it, but probably today after this session I will do a more chill stream with music, and have all day ahead, so we will get there. um, yeah, let's start with bishop versus knight, and the way I'm approaching this very very wide topic of bishop versus knight in the endgame is I'm going to do first uh, how to put it. I'm going to, I'm Team Knight, right? You know me. Hey guys, hey Markomar, hey Kingy 2 lol. Go Pepe, go Chess, go 45-45, exactly. So I'm I'm a knight person. I'm Team Knight. I prefer knights over bishops, which is just a choice. It's a life choice. Like, some players pick the Scandi, some players pick the French. Okay, it's a life choice. Doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're wrong. And so I'm Team Knight. That doesn't mean that knights are better than bishops. It's not always the case. Of course, you all know that sometimes a knight is better, sometimes a bishop is better, but um, it's definitely one of the most important dynamics of chess, bishop versus knight. It's the only case of two completely different pieces that are worth or valued the same, right? Or at least that's what if we try to make up a value for them, we say a knight is valued 3 pawns and a bishop is 3 pawns as well. And the reason we do that is because, well, in general, if you count all the situations that are possible in chess, that seems about right. it's it's obviously we know about the relative value of the pieces, and we know sometimes a bishop is just horrible. It's just like a big pawn, and sometimes a knight is completely trapped and dominated and it's worthless. So we understand pieces can have different values, but understanding the dynamics between this fight versus of knight versus bishop in, let's say, controlled environments, like almost in a lab kind of situation where we're going to analyze endgames with, let's say, for example, what we're seeing now on the board is what we're going to start with bishop and pawn versus knight. This is a very simple scenario. Okay, not so simple as we will see, but it's already limited enough that we're going to start understanding these dynamics between bishops and knights. Now, I think we all understand what's the power of a knight and what's the power of a bishop. We understand the advantages and the drawbacks of having each type of piece. But for those of you, especially beginners in chess, let's remind ourselves about what those are. A bishop is a long-range piece, right? Bishop can go very fast from one side of the board to, like in one move, you can go from one side of the board to another, to the opposite side. You can go pretty much anywhere on the board as long as it's of the same color. And if you pick any random destination of the same color, very likely you can get there like in 2 moves, like any random destination, as long as it's the same color, because the bishop cannot change color. On an open board, you can go like in a couple moves. Different scenarios when you have when you don't have an open board and you have blocked pawn structures, and sometimes you need to maneuver the bishop, right? But in general, bishops thrive in open boards, and they're very fast. They can reach places very fast, right? While a knight, let's pick a random destination like, I don't know, c8. Well, it will take 1, 2, let's say 3, 4, 5. This would be a path. There are many other routes to get to c8, but it takes 5 moves. It's like knights are slower. It takes more time to get to a far destination, and sometimes even to a not so far destination, because knights are also clumsy. Like, for example, to bring the knight from g1 to g2, you need 1, 2, 3 moves. To bring it to e3, which is like, it looks pretty close, and for a bishop it would be instantly 1 move, but a knight would need 1, 2, 3, 4 moves to get there. So knights are a little bit clumsy when it comes to arriving certain destinations, sometimes even close destinations, sometimes far destinations, but they're clumsy. They need to find the way. But of course, there's a big power to the knight as opposed to the bishop, is it can target any square on the board, because knights can, well, they actually keep switching colors, right? Keep swapping colors. They go from black to white, from white to black. So the power of the knight is it can target any square. The power of the bishop is it's really fast, long range. So sometimes, people say knights jump over pieces. They can jump over pieces, like in the initial position. You can play knight f3, jumping over the pawns. You can understand it like that, or however you want to understand it, this jumping thing. But yeah, definitely in blocked positions, knights are better than bishops, or they have at least more chances to be powerful. And last but not least, when we have pawns on both sides of the board, usually that benefits the bishop, because as we know from it being a long-range piece, it can go from one side to the other very fast, while the knight has a hard time trying to do things on both sides of the board. So anyway, that's like the basics, and I understand everyone understands this, but we have to we have to put it there just for the record. And today we're going to cover scenarios where the bishop, aka the villain, because I'm team knight, is the stronger piece. So we're going to analyze endgames where the bishop is the side with the advantage. And we're going to see defensive ideas for the knight. We're going to see attacking ideas for the bishop. And I think this I have so much material that this will probably take us more than one session. Only this, I'm expecting a couple sessions for this, and then another couple of sessions for the case where the knight is the stronger piece. So we're going to start with the villain winning. Oh, but no, we're gonna see some scenarios where it doesn't achieve victory. Now, again, we're gonna start with bishop and pawn versus knight. It we may cover, if we have time enough today, we may cover other scenarios like bishop and two pawns versus knight, and what else do I have here? More scenarios with more pawns where the bishop has either the extra pawn or just the advantage in equal pawn situations. And I have a lot of material, so I don't think we're gonna get through all of that. But well, we're gonna start with this. Now I see my board is a little bit weird, my layout, so let me put it like this, a bit bigger. I'm gonna make my camera smaller. I think this will need to be changed again when I switch to playing instead of the study, but that's all right. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm going to be a very bad person now. I'm going to be a very bad person, and I'm going to edit the transform here, and I'm going to hide the moves so you can't see them. And of course I'm doing it in the wrong spot. 1 second. This would be crop right. Yeah. See, I'm a very bad person. So, so I'm not showing the moves to not, spoil anything about where we're gonna see. So again, the topic for today: bishop being a stronger piece. Like for example, this case, bishop and pawn versus knight. The only side that can win is obviously the side with the bishop, because they have the extra pawn. Now, importantly, we know that you can't checkmate with just a knight, and you can't checkmate with just a pawn. With just a bishop. However, you can checkmate with just a bishop against a knight, or with just a knight against a bishop, and so on. We're not going to cover all those scenarios where you self-mate yourself. Not today. I think that probably goes for another session where we cover stupid moves or something like that. we don't expect people to self-mate themselves, so we can start today on the basis that the only side thanks for the follow, Akon. We're gonna start with the basis that the only side that can checkmate or win here is the side that has the extra pawn. We're gonna base our session on this assumption. Is that all right with you? Because obviously there's some scenarios where, for example, in this position we're seeing, there's some legal sequence of moves where white can get checkmated. There is, because there's a knight, and there's no reason white decides to promote to a queen. So you can self-mate yourself. It's possible. Okay, we're not gonna cover it today because it won't happen really. So I think we can agree then, therefore, that only white can win here, and the way white is going to win, again, black is not going to self-mate either, so the only way to win is going to be to promote that pawn to a queen normally, but of course, you can promote to a rook, or you can try to torture your opponent, and if you win the knight, then you can promote to a bishop or a knight and so on. But in general, the idea for white is obviously to try and promote the pawn to a queen. Now, there we're gonna see different scenarios. The good news for white is white has a lot of things that are advantageous here. A lot of good positive things in this position. One is the pawn is really close to promoting. Another one is the king is helping the pawn. The king is really well placed, and the opponent's king is not so well placed to stop that promotion. The other good news is the bishop is the color of the promotion square. That could be good or could be bad. Generally speaking, you don't want your bishop to defend the pawn because, of course, if the knight can be sacrificed for the pawn, it's a draw. So the idea of being of the same color of the promotion square is not going to be useful to protect promotion and promote, because knight takes pawn is a draw, or knight takes queen is a draw, but rather to fight for that square, to fight for the control of that square. Like if the knight was ever there in the promotion square, we could chase it away, for example. So good news to have the bishop of the promotion color, but not entirely super obvious how that's useful. Anyway, we're going to see here that the bishop can put the knight in zugzwang. That's like one of the very first concepts that we should understand about bishop versus knight, is that the knight can fall into a zugzwang kind of situation. Now, are you all familiar with the concept of zugzwang? Or let's put it another way. Who knows what a zugzwang is? Anyone there? The other day I asked, I made a poll on Mastodon. Let me bring it up because it was funny. Pufu doesn't know. Okay, cool. That's good. Because it's an important concept. If I can see my toots, I'll find a way. La 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 la. Hey, thanks for the follow, Pufue. Pafue. I don't know how to spell how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I do it wrong. Pufu, I'm gonna call you. So the other day I asked on Mastodon, without looking it up, what do you think zugzwang means? And I tagged it as quiz language. And I gave some options. And now, you know this is a chess stream. You're here for the chess, so you won't fail this one. But I gave the options. A type of swing common in Germany. A chess position where every move is bad. That's the right answer. A valve to let full air escape. And fourth option, none. You just made up that word. And I got only 9 votes total, but I can tell you one person voted for a type of swing common in Germany, and 2 people voted for none. You just made up that word. But yeah, zugzwang means a chess position when every move is bad. Or let's explain this. So it's a chess position where it's your turn to move, and every move you can make makes your position worse. So it's a chess position where the best move would be no move. The best move would be I pass my turn. Unfortunately, in chess, you can't pass your turn. So, and that's what zugzwang means. The original word in German, it means zug is a word for move, and zwang is a word for like force or compulsion. So it's you're forced to move, and that's the problem. Because if you could pass your turn, you would be totally fine. And if you think about it, let me bring up a more basic endgame. I'm gonna delete this chapter later, but if you think about winning endgames and that we know of, or even king and rook versus king, that's a good example. King and rook versus king, like this position. It's white to move. Okay, so one way I could have put black to move, but okay, let's say if it's white to move, the move I would play is this one, rook f5. Of course, any move wins, basically, except rook f8. But this is one of the shortest paths to checkmate, because it's checkmate next move. Why? Because the opponent will play king h8 and we will deliver mate, right? But this is a zugzwang position. This is, if black could pass the turn, we wouldn't get a checkmate. Let's say black can pass the turn here. Then how do we checkmate? We can't. And if we go this way, black will prevent the checkmate by moving. But once we get to the position where black is forced to move and black doesn't want to move, if black could pass the turn, king and rook versus king would be a draw. So yeah, that's funny. So uh, having to make a move is a very important feature of chess. Let me delete this chapter because it does not belong on this study. So can you do an example when you have a queen and a king versus a rook and a king? Yes, I mean queen. That's, by the way, another interesting. That's a very interesting endgame that we're gonna cover. Um, yeah, let's put this and with white to play. This is a well-known position of queen versus rook, where if it was black to move, black would lose immediately. I once got stuck. My opponent kept sticking his rook to his king. Yeah. Okay, queen versus rook is a very, very, very complicated endgame that we're going to cover. We already talked about it in previous sessions, and we're going to cover in we're going to do a specific session for it, or more than one actually, because it's very complicated. Now, this is the one position that you should know if you ever play queen versus rook, because in general, in human play, the queen usually wins very easily. But it's important to know this one position, where if it was black to move, black would lose immediately because black is in zugzwang precisely. Black can't keep the rook near the king. Can't. Those moves are protected by the queen. Oops. So the rook can't stay there. The king doesn't want to move, because if you move the king, then every move wins. Like, it's not black to move, okay, so I can't make a move, but you could pin the rook, you could deliver a check that's going to be checkmate, you could there are many ways to win, but I would pin the rook. That's the easiest. So if black is forced to move, black needs to go with the rook really far from the king, and in all those squares that the rook can go, these 7 squares, you're going to have a sequence of 2 to 3 checks that you will collect the rook, because the rook is far from the king. So there's always, you're going to find a way. So interestingly, it's white to move. So what we should do as white to win this position is a triangulation. So we get back to this position, but passing the turn to black. So we would do, for example, this check. The king can't go there because of checkmate, so the king needs to go back to a8 or a7. It doesn't really matter which one, because now when we do the check here, look, we're doing a triangulation here, importantly. It doesn't matter if the king is on a7 or on a8, because the king needs to go back to b8. And the reason is, even if you're on a8 and you block now, that would be checkmate. So basically you have to go back to b8. And now we will go back to the initial position, but it's black to move. And now, as we said, the rook needs to go away. The rook needs to go far from the king, and we're going to have a sequence of checks to collect that rook. So this is one example of triangulation to leave black in zugzwang. And by zugzwang, again, what we mean is black needs to make their position worse with any logical move. Would make the position worse. If black could pass the turn, black would have no issues here. Black would just say, okay, I passed my turn, you're back to square one. How do you win here? But yeah, black is in zugzwang. Okay, so thanks for that. I think that was probably a good example. I'm going to delete it too, because the topic of today was knight versus bishop, so no queens, no rooks today. Okay? Let's go back to this position. And we're going to talk about how a knight can be in zugzwang. uh, when fighting against a bishop. Now, a bishop has the power of having a long range, so it's very hard to dominate a bishop. We talked about domination a lot in this stream, and we're going to talk about domination today as well when we talk about zugzwang, because in the end zugzwang is domination as well. Domination means when you're controlling all the squares your opponent's piece can jump to. Like in this case, this knight is sort of dominated by the bishop, but the bishop is also dominated by the knight, right? They're just fighting for the same squares. That means that whoever has the turn has a problem. So the bishop can't go to any of those squares, or can it? Okay, that's a different topic. But in principle, both pieces are dominating each other, so both pieces can try to put the other in zugzwang. Now, the difference between a bishop and a knight is the bishop has a longer range, so the bishop is usually much harder to put in zugzwang. It's harder to dominate. It's very easy that the bishop will always have moves. Now, it's white to move, okay? And white wants to promote, but we want that knight out of the c6 square. The only thing preventing now the promotion is that knight. The knight is, black is saying, okay, I'm going to keep my king defending the knight. I'm going to keep my king over here, and I'm never ever going to move the knight. The knight is controlling the promotion square. Whenever you promote, I'm going to sacrifice my knight. And the knight is on a light square, no problem. Your bishop is never going to attack my knight. So this is going to be a draw, right? Well, not quite, because the king doesn't have a lot of squares to defend the knight, right? We say, okay, yeah, we're going to keep the king close. Not so fast. How about we prevent the king from staying on this diagonal, because we have a bishop. So let's put the bishop on that diagonal. So the first move, the winning move, is bishop b4 check. Damn, I'm going to give... Oh, it already has an exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. And now you'd be like, wait a second, didn't you just say that the knight was dominating the bishop, preventing precisely that move? Well, you can't really take it, because the knight is doing another job, which is preventing promotion. So the bishop can't be taken. Knight takes bishop. White would get a queen, and with a check also, so yeah, no problem there. So black needs to move the king. And if we play king d5 already, well, they're going to attack our knight, and we're going to be in zugzwang. So in the game, because this comes from a game, black tried king e6. Now every move wins, including king c7. But the line that was played in the game was bishop c5, apparently. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the character of the position. We're controlling this diagonal. King d5, bishop a3. So we're preventing the king from defending the knight, let's say, forever. And now after a check, king b7, knight back there, finally king c7 was played. So, okay, white maybe spent a few moves that didn't need to be spent, but in the end, this is the situation that we were aiming for. This zugzwang situation where black wants to pass the turn. Black is defending the knight is preventing promotion, but there's no moves, no legal moves to keep that. Because the king doesn't have other square to defend the knight, so the king doesn't want to move. And the knight has to stay on c6. If we move the knight, white promotes. So yeah, this is at zugzwang. And again, the knight is much easier to be put into a zugzwang than the bishop. And there are two reasons, by the way, about it. One is what I already said about the long range, meaning the bishop usually has more squares to go to. But another, and very important in this case, because the knight is doing a job of controlling one square, is that whenever a knight moves, it stops controlling whichever squares they were controlling. While with a bishop, if let's say a bishop was controlling a promotion square, you can always move the bishop on the same diagonal and keep controlling that square. So for a bishop that was controlling a promotion square, you attack it, the bishop goes far beyond, I mean, it goes somewhere else in the same diagonal, it keeps controlling the square. A knight, this knight can jump to any square and keep controlling the 8. It can't. I mean, you can jump to the 8, but it's going to be taken. So that's why a knight can be put into zugzwang much more easily than a bishop, right? So this first example shows the problems of the knight as a defender in situations where the opponent has a lot of advantages, that is the pawn near to promote, the defending king really badly placed, and okay, this is a win. Now, going back to the initial position, we're gonna see a very similar position, hopefully exactly the same, but in this case with black to move. Okay, so it's the first the same position, but now it's black to move, and black can draw. Okay, so that's when you know a position is critical, when depending on whose turn it is, the result is different. Then the position is critical. Like we saw how white could win by placing the bishop on this diagonal, and now if black is given the turn, there's one thing black can try and do to secure the draw. So this is a very important, fundamental defensive resource, which, by the way, I'm going to change the title of the chapter because there's a typo there. I'm going to share this study. For now, it's unlisted, but I will make it public after the sessions. All right, so now it's black to move, black to try and save the position. The good news when you have the knight, and again, I'm team knight. The good news when you have the knight is you can't just sit. Like, it's much easier to sit around with the bishop and do nothing. But with the knight, you always have to do something. So that's good. We have to do something. We can't just say we pass. So what do? Well, we can't just, I mean, there's not a lot of options. We either move the king, which would be probably the equivalent to doing nothing. That would be my guess. If we move the king, we don't change anything. Or we can deliver a check. Knight e7 check or knight a7 check. Well, my first instinct would be to go for the checks, because and this applies to many other endgames as well. When your opponent has a very good position and everything is like harmonic, like, you know, the bishop is dominating our knight, the pawn is one move away from promoting, the king is on the perfect square to support that pawn. Do a check. I mean, try to ruin your opponent's harmony somehow, right? So I'm not saying this is a 100% rule that you should apply always, but in general, giving a check when your opponent's pieces are in the best squares, especially the king, makes a lot of sense. So knight e7 check, it's very forcing as well, because, you know, we're also attacking the pawn. So if we play this check, white only has one move. White needs to keep the pawn defended. So king d8 is forced, and also that looks good from a defensive point of view. You know, forcing the king in front of their pawn. Well, that makes promotion a little bit more difficult. The problem is we need to move again. Again, we need to move. That's a bummer. And also we can't just. We need to be careful with our pieces, because now the knight is really exposed to being taken. So what could be more logical than repeating the position? Let's go back to c6 with a check. Knight c6 check, right? Now, when you're defending and you want to make a draw, you have absolutely no fear of repeating position, right? So So this knight c6 makes a lot of sense. Of course, there are other moves that make sense here, and you could consider like knight e5 attacking the bishop makes a lot of sense. It may also be a draw. Not 100% sure. I think it's a draw too. But in general, going back to where you were, controlling the promotion square, doing a check makes a lot of sense. Of course, you need to calculate what happens after king e8. Now, if king c8, we repeat, threefold repetition, we take the draw, we go home. So the only critical idea would be uh, king e8. The, you know, uh, the thing that we could be scared of, maybe. Now, there's something that changed here regarding the initial position. There's something very important that changed here. Is white brought the king to the other side of the pawn, and that's important because now this king will never attack our knight anymore, right? So what we did here, let's go back. Very important. If we do nothing, white is gonna put our pieces in zugzwang and eventually attack the knight with their king, and that's when we're gonna lose. We did a check. The king is forced to keep the pawn defended. We did a check again. The king doesn't want to repeat, go for a threefold repetition, so has to go to the other side of the pawn. Now that the king is there, our knight is that's fine. It's never gonna be attacked. So now we play king e6. And now white has no way to put us in zugzwang anymore. What can white try? White can still play bishop b4. Yeah, no problem. We're never gonna take it because promotion. And now we can't go to d6. Okay, right? But we can go to d5. And as the arrow suggests, we're gonna go back to e6 next, because if the king was on c8, king c7 would win on the spot. But now this king can never attack our knight anymore, so we're fine, and we're gonna go back to e6, no problem. The bishop moves, we go back to e6. So the only move that prevents king e6 and prevents us from having this fortress, another important concept in endgames, fortress is a setup that can't be broken, and it's a draw. So we have a fortress here unless white plays king f7, right? King f7, only move to prevent king e6. But now king f7 allows an immediate draw. Who can tell me what's the immediate draw here? An immediate draw, like you play a move and the opponent shakes hands with you. It's like, okay, it's a draw. What's the immediate draw here? I'm Mystery Man, hello, knight e6, rar, illegal move. But I guess you meant the same as ergo proxy, yes, knight e5 check, bam. And of course, we're gonna sack our knight for the pawn and draw. King e8, knight takes d7, and draw. Very well. Okay, so what did we learn today? Well, we learned a few things already. A bishop can put the knight in zugzwang. The zugzwang is always in danger when you have the knight. So even if we are team knight, I'm team knight, we need to know what our weaknesses are. We can be put in zugzwang. And what we also learned is, even in, this is like kind of the most desperate situation we can be put into when we're defending against a passed pawn. The passed pawn is one square from promoting, the king is helping it promote, the bishop is of the color of the promotion square. We're in a very desperate situation, and still, if you give us the turn here, we have a draw. And the way to draw is to keep checking until the opponent decides to go to the other side of the pawn. Then this is a draw. This is a draw. Now, of course, this is just an example. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be able to make a draw. We should see what happens if the bishop is of the different color. So okay, we didn't cover all the scenarios here yet, but this is the important concept that we're learning. Um, how the Z Dallas, and so this is a draw. And we have this fortress that we go back and forth unless the opponent allows this knight 5 check and knight takes. And so what are the good news? That this was a desperate situation and we still made a draw. So I think it's fair to say in general that bishop and pawn versus knight, unless in a very bad situation, it tends to be a draw. Same as knight and pawn versus bishop, by the way. Like, a lot of chances for a draw. The good news for the knight also is that the bishop only controls squares of one color, so the knight is more powerful in that sense. And you know, as long as you achieve sacrifice of the knight for the pawn, and you know, the pawns, and what I'm going to say is very obvious but has to be said. The pawns on their way to promoting, they have to traverse both colors. They have to go to a white square, to a dark square, light square, dark. So there's always going to be, or you know, especially if the pawn is not too far advanced, there's always a chance that you find the square where you're going to block the pawn, or you're going to stop the pawn and never go through that square when you have the knight. Okay, so we saw this defensive resource, very important, and we're going to move on to the next example. And this example showcases a king, a defending king, in front of the pawn. Remember the previous example, the king, the defending king, was really in a bad place. Now the king is in front of the pawn. King in front of the pawn means 99% of the times, 99% of the times, king in front of the pawn is going to be a draw. Because you just need to bring the knight to any of the squares, you know, to control any of the squares in front of the pawn, and it's going to be an immediate draw, super easy draw. Now, this position we see here is that other 1%. This position is a win for white only because the knight is really bad placed. Okay, so defending king in front of the pawn is a draw almost always, except if the knight is really bad placed. And so we're seeing an example where if it's black to move again, it would be an easy draw, but it's white to move and win. And the only reason white is winning here again is because that knight is really bad. It's in a very bad place. Knight on the rim is dim. You all know that, right? So there's one winning move for white here, and I'm pretty sure, because we talked so much about domination in this stream, that the move comes to you instantly, right? How does white win here? We need to neutralize that knight. Bishop e5, very well, ergo. Bishop e5 dominates the knight. Completely domination of the knight. The knight can't move. The knight, we could say the knight is in zugzwang, but the problem here is not a zugzwang. The problem is you can't move the knight at all. so you can't use it for whatever you want to use it. The king is not in zugzwang, but the problem is the king alone will not be able to stop king and pawn, helped by the bishop. So bishop e5, nice move, only winning move in this case, but good enough. Yeah, now this knight is useless, and white can try to hold, because, you know, if you imagine the same position without the bishop and without the knight, it's a draw, right? This king and pawn versus king endgame, we know it's a draw when the king is in front of the pawn. You crack the code, e5 is the square today. Yeah, right, true. Yeah, every puzzle from now on, the solution is going to be piece to e5, either bishop or knight or king. Okay, So yeah, this position without bishop and knight would be a draw, but the bishop is going to be helping too. Right now it's keeping the knight away, but it's going to be helping. It's going to be also supporting the pawn, and also not to mention the the importance of the zugzwang. And before is the code. Before what? Okay, so yeah, sometimes in king and pawn versus king, a stalemate, when you get to the position that's a draw but it's a stalemate, it is a stalemate unless you have a knight that you didn't want to move, but you have to move it to a square where it can be taken. Then if it's taken, it's a stalemate, but it doesn't have to be taken. So okay, so sometimes having a piece out of place is one of the worst things that can happen to you in an endgame, because that even prevents stalemates at some point. But anyway, in this case, uh, we still have to win this as white, and this example shows how you have to be precise, because now again there's only one winning move, and this is not too complicated because there's not a lot of useful moves that you can do anyway. But we need to be careful. We need to be careful, and we need to try and win this while still keeping the knight away. White just passes somehow, so black's king has to move, so king c5. Yeah, somehow, yeah, king c5 is the winning move, and I think it's a very natural move. Now, some people may mistakenly think about the plan of, oh, let's go, the knight is trapped, let's go let's go try to collect the knight, then we have a winning endgame. The problem, obviously, king e4 is king e6. And you may say, that's fine, I will still continue. Let's put the line on the board, by the way. Because you may say, oh, that's okay. That's okay. I'll continue. Because if you take my bishop, I can promote. You're not in time to stop promotion, right? You can say that. Makes sense. And you can't play king f5 either, because I'm going to promote the pawn, right? That makes sense. The problem, obviously, is with the help of the king, and with our king so far away from our pawn, now the knight can be moved. The knight can back. The knight can come back in the game, and this is an immediate draw. The knight is controlling d7, taking the knight doesn't win. Yeah. So this is the wrong plan. And also I have to mention, if king e4, knight f6 directly is possible. Yeah, if we take the knight, now black's king is attacking our pawn. So, in fact, this move king d7 attacks our pawn on d6. Our pawn is defended as many times as it can be defended, but what it means is that now our king needs to keep the pawn defended, because otherwise the knight can go. If our king stops defending the pawn, the knight can move. We cannot take the knight if we lose the pawn, right? So king c5, but yeah, only move that keeps the pawn defended, and only move to make progress. And now, obviously, the critical line is king e6, because if the king goes back, we keep making progress with our pawn, and it's going to be an easy win. So the critical line is king e6. I mean, there's something to be said about that, because some people may think, oh yeah, but you know what? If this is going to be if you play king d6, then I can move my knight, because if you take it, it's a stalemate. And if you can't play king c7, how are you going to win? Well, so many ways. Like bishop c7 and promote would be one way. My way probably would be bishop h8, or, bishop h8 I think would be my way. Just keep the bishop on this diagonal. So if the knight moves, bishop f6 is checkmate, right? So the king has to go to e7, then king c7, and so on. But yeah, so many ways to win. In that case, the knight is not helping at all. So king e6, critical line. Critical line. And now, that would be super nice, mate. Yeah. Let's put it on the board, sorry. What was the line? This one. Yeah, let's move the knight somewhere. Yeah, this is mate. Okay, so let's go back here. And after king c5, black tries king e6. Makes a lot of sense. Threatening to bring the knight already back. No, not a real threat, if you ask me, but okay, it could be an idea. Threatening our bishop, also not a real threat. Um, but if we're not careful, any of those can happen. This an obvious move here. I don't think anyone would be thinking about a different move than king c6. But of course, it's different when you know it's a winning endgame. Then you know, oh, king c6 is the winning move, or when you're over the board and you don't know if it's a draw or not, and you're like, is king c6 winning or not? But it has to be king c6, right? It has to be. So yeah, king c6 is winning. And you know, when you're over the board, it's different. When we're studying endgames and we already know it's a winning situation. When you're over the board, sometimes you're like, okay, so maybe it was a draw all along, right? And sometimes it happens. Sometimes you think something's winning and it was all the way a draw. But yeah, king c6 wins, and we're about to play d7 and get a queen. And there's not much black can do about it. I mean, black can get the bishop, and we're gonna play queen versus knight. This is how the game ended, by the way. But yeah, now our king. Now, if we remove bishop and knight, it's a winning king and pawn versus king endgame. So now bringing the knight back doesn't help. Bishop takes knight, and we're gonna get a queen. And yeah, this is a win. So going back, bishop e5, very important. Now, if it wasn't because the knight is like in literally one of the worst squares possible on the board, this would be a draw. This would be a draw because king in front of the pawn. Again, very easy draw. And in fact, the next position I brought is the same position with black to move. And there are only two moves that draw here, but I think they're very obvious. So I'm going to ask you, which two moves draw here for black? What do you think? '95, no. '95. No, only when it's legal. We're only gonna give, yeah, knight f6. Yeah, knight f6 is, I think, the obvious one. There's another move that draws. Roy, hey, yes, knight f6. Yeah, knight f6 is like the obvious one, right? And the other move that draws is not king d7, not Roy. King d7 loses. Amazing. Hey, thanks for the follow. Welcome. King d7 loses. I think you just arrived. Yeah, knight g7, indeed. Yeah, knight g7, correct. I think in this, if you just arrived and you didn't see what we just saw, then king d7 would be a normal mistake to make. But we just saw this position on the previous puzzle, bishop e5, and white wins. Because we saw this position with white to play. Bishop e5 was winning, and then after king d7, king c5, and so on. So yeah, king d7 doesn't work because of bishop e5. So this is the thing to remember, and I'm gonna repeat it just once again. I'm gonna repeat it just once again. When the defending king is in front of the pawn, 99% of the times it's a draw. The only reason it can be lost is if you have a very, very bad knight. Like in this position, you have a very, very bad knight. Now, if we give the turn to black, black can still save the position, but the problem to solve is the very, very bad knight. So we must bring the knight back into the game. And of course, the bishop is controlling these two squares. So the only moves that make a draw here are knight g7, knight f6. And that's the thing to remember, I think. If you're defending, your goal is always going to be try to bring the king in front of the pawn if possible, and try to have a good knight, not have the knight, like really, really bad. This is a really bad knight. Both moves, knight g7 and knight f6 draw. I think knight f6 is the most obvious one because you immediately go to the d7 square, which, as we mentioned earlier, because the pawn needs to traverse both colors, light square, dark square, light square, dark square, as soon as we find a square that's the opposite color from the bishop, in this case d7 is, that's it. We're going to blockade on that square. There's nothing white can do. I thought king e8 is better. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. Not sure how to read that. Knight e8. Oh, bring the knight to e8. That's an option. Yeah, that's an option. Or from f6 as well. But after this, well, for example, after king e6, knight e8 is not possible because of the fork. So I guess king e6 prevents knight e8. But even if you put the king somewhere else, I think blocking is super easy. But one thing is true, is that if the king doesn't go to any of these two squares, then knight e8 immediately threatens to sacrifice the knight for the pawn, and d7 can be pushed. So yeah, knight e8 would be an idea to draw as well, unless the king controls d7. Then it's not. Then it's not, because we lose. For example, and I'm going to show a nice idea. Is after knight e8 blunder, d7 check, king d8. Well, we don't take the knight, right? Because then it's a draw. So the reason this is winning for white is not that we're forking king and knight, because we can't really take the knight to win, but rather we're gonna force now a situation where black is in zugzwang. For example, we know the answer here, right? We know the move, because the answer is always e5. I think there are other winning moves, but I would play bishop e5 here, right? And now, yeah. And now black can still try king e7, right? Because any knight move allows bishop f6 mate. At least. Probably bishop takes knight, wherever the knight goes as well. But king e7 can be tried here, right? And now how about bishop c7? Bishop c7, and we're threatening to promote. So our plan again is to promote the pawn. It's not to take the knight, or at least not to take it, giving away our pawn, but rather promoting. So yeah, I wanted to show this because some people have these like super basic animal instincts that, oh yeah, before the knight we take the knight. No, taking the knight is not the goal. The goal is to get a queen. Okay. Okay, so in this case we're gonna get a queen on the d8 square. Yeah, so knight e8, yeah, sometimes it may work, but against king c6 and against king e6 I think it doesn't work. But for example, in that case, just simply knight e7, and there's no way, because it's a light square, there's no way that white can push our knight out of that square in a good way. For example, and I'm gonna, although I think my next example was precisely the Taimanov blockade, so we're gonna see another example of this, but since we're here, we're gonna see it already. What could be a way for white to try and put black in zugzwang in this position? Imagine the same position, let's say with the bishop on e7, preventing king d8, then, or on g5, then the knight would be forced to move. The thing is, the knight will always have squares to keep d7 under control. We always will have squares. The king and bishop may be able to control some of these squares, but not all of them. That's important, because right now we have 6 squares where we can bring the knight to those squares, still keep an eye on d7, and then on the next move go back to d7. but there's no way the bishop and the king can control all of them. If there was a way, then we would be in trouble. We would be in zugzwang. So as you can imagine, it is sad we can't pin the knight. Well, that's why we block on a light square. That's why we don't block on a square where of the color of the bishop. Okay, that's why as the defensive side, we want to block the pawn. We want to put the knight on a square that can't be attacked by the bishop. Now, because of what I'm saying, and this is an important concept, okay, because of what I'm saying, that if there was a way for the king and bishop to control all of those squares, we would be in zugzwang. Well, and also control d8 in this case and c7. Also control the squares where the king could move to keep the knight defended. If there was a way to control all of those squares with bishop and king, black would be in zugzwang. There is no way in this position. Now, we can imagine how there is a way if the knight was closer to a corner of the board. Because as you know, a knight in the center of the board has 8 squares to go. A knight in, how do we call these squares? Near a side of the board, but not quite the side of the board. Like this square the knight is on right now. It has 6 squares to go. Not the rim, but close to the rim. It has 6 squares to go. Now, if you go closer to the rim, it may have 4. If you go closer to the rim and a corner, there's a point where it has 3. And if you go all the way in a corner, it has only 2. So the important concept to remember is, of course, a knight will be much worse the closer it is to a corner. And then in some situations, and we're going to see actually some examples of that, in some situations, the bishop and the king can totally remove the knight's moves. And in that case, the knight can be in zugzwang, yes. Even blocking on a good square, a square of the color opposite of the bishop. So in this case, it's a draw. There's nothing white can do. But we're going to see examples where there's something that it can be done. So I think I'm ready to move on to the next example precisely. Hey, Chespong, what's up? Oh yeah, actually this is a fun example. This is a fun example. I am learning. Nice, Schnabler. We're all learning. New home setup. No, I'm just in the room. You know, sometimes I stream from the living room, sometimes from here. My wife is streaming. Check out her stream. She's great. I think she's gonna be streaming all day. so I came to the room just to avoid the collision between both. Yeah. So shout out. I think she was streaming chess last time I checked, but she may switch to other. She's more of a variety streamer. Check her out. She's great. She's much better than me. And I only stream chess. Yeah. Okay. So going back to this position, we're gonna see this very famous position from a Fischer Taimanov game, which should have been a draw with best defense, but it was a win for Bobby Fischer. And then we're gonna see another example, a study precisely, where we're gonna see what I just said about the knight being in zugzwang, even blockading on a good square. So Fischer Taimanov, yeah, Fischer destroyed Taimanov. Bishop f5. Well, first of all, it's black to move. If it was white to move, not sure about bishop f5. Bishop f5, maybe knight f3. But yeah, bishop f5 definitely an interesting move if it was white to move, because it would prevent knight d3, which would be the defensive idea here. Anyway, Taimanov got beat so hard by Fischer, he wrote a book about it. Nice. Yeah, so this is indeed a very famous example. And here's the moment where Taimanov went wrong. Um, so we're going to see what happened in the game. We're going to see what Black could have tried instead, and it should have been a draw. I don't know which order should I go. Um, let's start with the well. Unless you have an answer here, what do you think that this is? When you play guess the move, you play a grandmaster game. You take a grandmaster game and you try to guess the moves. You usually try to guess the moves from the winning side, but we can try to guess the move of the losing side here. What do you think Taimanov played? If maybe you know, and what would you play as Black here? I said 93. Did I? But did I? But was I tricking you? Maybe I said 93 indeed. Yeah. But did I mean in this precise position? H4 probably. Well, it's Black to move. It's Black to move and draw. Well, it's Black to move and Black can draw. Now, before we move on with the move 93, that's yes, I gave it away. I'm sorry about that. But you can still try to guess what Taimanov's move was, because Taimanov did not play 93. And no idea how Black holds this. Yeah. So the position looks bad. Okay. Uh, the attacking king is in a very good position. It prevents the defensive king, to go anywhere near the pawn. The pawn is going to try and promote on the h8. Good news, if any, is that the pawn is far from promotion at this point, and we know that when the pawn is far from promotion, the knight can try to find the perfect square to block it. Right now, we need to be precise about it, but we can find that square, such a square. And the other good news, if any, is that it's a rook's pawn. Rook's pawn always trickier to convert. Maybe king g6. Well, it's Black to move again, and no, Black didn't take on g4. Taking on g4, it's an obvious mistake. Taimanov will not make such a mistake. Yeah. White has to stop knight d3 and Black king getting to f4. Yeah. Actually, the idea of knight d3 and the reason it makes a draw is to install the knight on f4. He played king e4. Yes, he played king e4. Knight d7. Oops. Knight d7 also loses, but he did not play that. Taimanov did not play knight d3. Big T-bone. Taimanov blundered with king e4. And knight d3 would have been a draw. There were other moves that would have been a draw, because the plan is going to be knight d3, but also king d4 and king d6. So those moves are also draws, but the plan is always going to be to play knight d3. Even if you start with king d4 or with king d6, the plan is to go knight d3. And the reason is we want to install the knight on f4. And this reminds us of the first example we saw today. Maybe it does remind us of that. Remember when let me show it back so we all know what we're talking about. Remember this position where the knight was controlling a square, in this case the promotion square, so it was very desperate. It was like the last square you can control, really. But the same idea you could have with any squares the pawn has to go through. So we were controlling a square that, even if it was of the color of the bishop, the important thing is we had the knight on a square that can never be attacked by the bishop. So that's a knight that if we install it there and we can keep it defended with our king, we have a draw. And in this case, the way to win was precisely to do this, right? To keep this king in zugzwang and the knight in zugzwang, and that was the way to win. But if it was Black to move, we saw how to make a draw. We're not going to go back there. You can watch the video later. But that's the point: to install the knight in a square of the opposite color of the bishop, so it can't be chased away, as long as we can defend it with our king. And from there, we're ready to be sacrificed for the pawn. It doesn't matter that h5 is the color of the bishop. It doesn't matter. We're gonna sack our knight for the pawn whenever the pawn comes there. So yeah, knight d3 would have been a draw, and after h4, for example, running the pawn, we would have gone knight f4. And of course, critical is king f5, because if king f5 does not happen, the knight will be on f4 forever. But let's put king f5 on the board. So okay, let's explore this. Let's explore the draw first, and then we will see the game. Now this is a nice situation. Black to play and draw. Run into corner, very nice Schnebler. We have a viewer who knows their endgames here. Now we can't play king e3, unfortunately. We can't run to defend the knight, so the knight is being chased away from controlling h5. But what do we have here? Remember how I told you it's a rook's pawn. What is important with rook pawns and bishop? The color of the corner. This is what we call a wrong color corner, right? Or wrong color pawn, wrong color rook pawn. I don't know. Wrong has to be there. Wrong color bishop. Yeah, you can say the pawn is wrong, the corner is wrong, the bishop is wrong. Something's wrong, right? Wrong winning position. Yeah. So I think people call it wrong color bishop, as Chespong is saying, but yeah, it's just wrong. It's just wrong color. The thing is, after king takes knight, in this case we play king d6. Yeah, we start running with the king, and after king takes, this is a draw. King e7. So this is a draw because it's the wrong color. There's no way to win this. We're going to put our king. We're going to bring our king to the corner, basically, and there's no way for white to prevent it in time. And then white will be able to push the pawn all the way to h7 if they want. But we're going to stay with our king on h8, g7. I will never play this. Yeah, if you don't know this, it's hard to to figure it out. You wouldn't sacrifice your knight. So if you've never seen this before, but yeah, we've already. I think we've already seen this in many other endgame sessions. It's not intuitive at all if you have never seen it before. But yeah, the fact is this king will get in the corner, and then even if you push the pawn all the way to h7, it doesn't matter. The king will stay on h8, g7 until you stalemate it, because there's no way you can control h8. There's no way. You don't have a dark square bishop. So you can control a g7, yeah, with your king, and then it's a stalemate. But stalemate is the most you can get out of this as white. There's no way to chase the king away from the corner to promote your pawn. So this is going to be a draw. And I mean, we can make moves. You can run. I'm going to the corner. You can push your pawn. Yeah, and doesn't matter what you do. If you ever push, it's a stalemate. If you ever go here, it's a stalemate. If your pawn was on h5 and king on g5, it would be a win. Okay, let's go back. So, if the pawn was on h5 and the king on g5, well, the key square is when the king was on e7. No, because the key square. Oh, well, yes. You're right. Yes. So we need to get to this position with the pawn h5 and white to move. So let's make it very stupid with black and go back here. And now white to move can win in many ways. For example, king g6, and after king f8, bishop e6, or you can start with bishop e6. But yeah, as long as you can keep the king from arriving to h8 or g7 in this case, it is a win. Yes, definitely. So of course it's not like this, for example, wins. So yeah, chess is about statics and dynamics. So you can just understand, oh, because it's a wrong corner, it's a draw. Now you need to see that you actually have a path to bring your king to the corner, and it cannot be prevented. In fact, there's actually a very nice study where this king is really, really far away, and you can still make a draw. Sorry, a win by putting the pawn on h6 and the bishop on h7. So you keep the king away, and then you bring your king just in time. So there are some interesting studies about that that I didn't bring because it was not the topic. but yeah, so this is like a side topic that we happen to have in this endgame. But yeah, very nice study. Actually, maybe I can bring up the position. Give me a second. Maybe I can. So the king is far. We have a bishop, let's say here. A pawn has to be on h5 probably already, or h6. King here. Now the king needs to be here, right? Needs to stop king g5. Yeah. So here, for example, would work too, right? So this is the kind of study king can be on a1. No, because then it's a draw, Gusbold. Then king f6 threatens king g5, and you have to repeat. No, it can. No. If I put the king on a1, this is a draw. So the point is, it's a draw. I'm telling you, this is a draw. So the point, the way white is trying to, okay, because of king g5 threat, you have to go. So you have to move the bishop again from h7, and then the king goes back to f7. So I'm gonna put it on the board. You play h6, okay? This is what white is trying to do. King g5, bishop g4. No, but the thing is, after king f7, you have to go bishop h7. It's the only move, because you have to prevent king g8. So after bishop h7, I go back here and I threaten this. This is a draw. You have to move your bishop again. And really, I mean, you don't need to put it on f5, but I would. Like, it doesn't matter, really. King g5 is a threat. You have to move the bishop again on this diagonal to prevent king g6. And then king f7 again. So the king needs to be close, and that's why I put the other. Of course, there are variations on this, and we may have another position where, where the king can be on another starting square. But yeah, the way to win this is that this bishop h7 to keep it away. Oops. But now when the king threatens king g5, you're just in time to close, and now white is going to win. I don't like endgames. You can start with king on d4. No, you have to prevent king g5. I don't think it works with the king on d4. Hey, Merry Christmas, Drag Nice. Trying to think. I don't think it works with the king on d4 because of the same reason. Because after king f7, you have to go king h7, bishop h7. Sorry. So this position, after king f7, you're forced to go bishop h7. I think your point is that you wanted to meet king g5 with some point of endgame is clear though. Okay. So with the king on d4 doesn't work either. I think you have to go here, and this is a threat. We would need king f4 here to win. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna delete these two chapters. And sorry we went there, but it's always nice to see important topics. I don't want to leave anything uncovered. Where were we? Here on Fischer Taimanov. So yeah, wrong corner, but again, don't take it for granted. Whenever you see a static factor like, oh, that's the wrong corner, it must be a draw. No, be careful. Not if there's one rule in chess that is 100% true, is the rule that nothing is 100% true all the time. So always check your calculation. Do you post these videos on YouTube? Yes. And I have a playlist. I think we only have like 3 or 4 videos so far on Endgames, but we're gonna do hundreds. Yeah. I mean, we've done a lot in the past. Now we're doing it in a more organized way, I guess. Hundreds, Jesus? Yeah. Well, there's at least 100 endgames you must know, and we're seeing more than those. We're seeing more. Anyway, I'll try to organize the content. Ambitious Pepe. Well, I studied all of those already, so I think it's nice to create the content for you. So yeah, that's how you make a draw here. Boom. You go to f4 and you use the fact that you're controlling the advance of the pawn from a square that can never be attacked by the bishop, and that forces the king to come target your knight, and that is what gives us the way to bring our king to the corner, right? So that would have been the drawing strategy that Taimanov didn't figure out in the game. For me, the middle game is still the most important. Do you study such endgames with Dvoretsky or some other book? Always found the books hard to digest. Yeah, the books are so hard to digest, and one of the reasons why I do these sessions is because I'm a weirdo and I love studying endgames. That makes me a weird person, right? But when I stream, I usually play chess or do commentary or do tactics, things like that. I very rarely do openings because I think that's the worst part to like the least recommended thing to do in general, and it's also very opinionated and a matter of taste and so on. So I usually don't do openings, but when I started doing some endgames on stream, and endgames are really important for so many reasons, and endgames is the thing I encourage my students to do besides tactics. When I started doing endgames, I thought, "Ooh, this is such a boring topic. Like, people will not like this." But actually, in fact, I think everybody understands how important endgames are, but they're just so boring to study alone. But people started liking these sessions, so that's why I'm doing them, because I think it's useful for people to do together. Actually, I found with my students that it's really nice for them it's nice to study endgames with me or with someone, but not alone. Like, studying endgames alone is such a right. But when you study with other people, it's always it makes it easier. And of course, we have a chill environment here, and I think it's yeah, people like it, so let's do it. Why not? Oh, Chespon says, I hated 100 Endgames by De La Villa. I want to get another Endgame book. Okay, so about books. First of all, I love that book. I think it's a very, very nice book. The only problem I see for that book is it doesn't go deep enough. So it's very basic. In my opinion, it's a very basic book, but that's what makes it very important for many people, because many people don't really study endgames in their life, and that's why it makes it a very relevant book. Um, I think in that book there may be a couple chapters that I think, for example, Rook and Pawn versus Rook. These chapters about the pawn, the sixth rank. That's probably my favorite topic of the book, and maybe knight versus pawn. So there are certain topics that I think they're very well explained in that book, and the examples are great to to study those endgames. But as for the rest, the book is really shallow, right? It's not very. Doesn't go deep into the examples, and in that aspect, I think it's a very good book for, I don't know, under 2,000 players maybe. But when you reach a level, yeah, you need to go deeper in your endgames. And the book that I really love, and the one that's giving me a lot to study for years now, is the Fundamental Chess Endings by Karsten Müller. That's like my reference endgame book right now. I think it's a great book, and and it's like the complete opposite to De La Villa, right? De La Villa, again, it doesn't go too deep. So right now, if I take the book, it would be a matter of looking at the diagrams and saying, oh yeah, I know that, I know that, I know that, I know that. Oh, this one, what was it? Oh yeah, okay. So it's like a good reference for basic endgames. But if you read the example, it's just that. It doesn't go deep. Now, the opposite is Fundamental Chess Endings by Karsten Müller, where, first of all, the book is much bigger, much thicker. If you only see the table of contents, is like, wow, like this goes into every topic. Okay, and then you pick any random page, you see 3 or 4 diagrams, you can spend a whole hour if you want with that page. It's like the examples are, first of all, analyze. Okay, maybe it doesn't go too deep into the analysis, but it shows many more lines that De La Villa would, and they're rich. They're rich positions like these ones I'm sharing. Many of them are from that book, and some others are collected by me or made up. But yeah, it's a very thorough book, and I really love it. I really like, you open the book on a random page, and it gives you hours of study. It's my favorite book right now. Of course, I do understand, and I've seen other books like Dvoretsky books, and I know there are many other books on endgames that are really really good. So yeah, I just tell you which my reference book is right now. And of course, the other book I'm in love with is the 2,545 endgame study compositions on domination by Kasparian. That's a great one for practice. Anyway, let me catch up with the chat before I move on with this example we were seeing. Let me see if I missed something. Schnebler asked the question. Chespon said he hated that. Blah blah blah. If you like Chessable, check out Kostia's course. Use Silman's endgames and study Capablanca endgames. Oh yeah, wow! For practical endgames, Capablanca has very nice examples. Yeah, definitely. I should use more of his games for examples. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Okay, 2,200 leeches. Yeah, 2,200 leeches. I don't know. What refutes King E4? We're gonna see it. We're gonna see it. Hey, old. Thanks for the follow. Welcome. Okay, I think I caught up with the chat. No other important questions. So King E4 was played in the game, and this is a very interesting moment. because there was, we can criticize Taimanov for for not finding the draw here, but the fact is there's only one winning move here, and I think we should instead applaud Bobby Fischer for finding the move. Not a very hard one, if you ask me, but okay. There's only one winning move here for White, and it's not Bishop f5, and that may have been Taimanov's mistake. Maybe Taimanov thought, oh, Bishop f5, I pass the king. Maybe that was his mistake. I don't know. I read Capablanca's best endgames, but it's more of a game collection. I liked it a lot, though. Yeah, Capablanca has many, but that's the thing with the classics. If you study Capablanca or Ale King or Paul Morphy, and you see lots of examples where you find great players playing against not so great players. So the good principles, the good techniques, they become so apparent. That's why they make great examples. Nowadays, every strong player has many more resources than Capablanca's opponents had. So nowadays, like, concepts are intertwined with the examples are not so pure to understand, so still good for analysis and study and work, but yeah, I should probably bring more examples from Capablanca because those were so clean sometimes. That's why I understand nothing in modern games. Yeah, it happens. Bishop e6, bishop f5, bishop f blah blah blah. Okay, so bishop f5 doesn't win. The winning move here, should we see why? I don't have notes for bishop f5, but we can see. How about king g5? King g5 is a draw, bishop f5 is a draw. We can see all of those. Abyss Beast, Merry Christmas. So let's quickly see bishop f5. Let's say the king goes, because that's what the king wanted to do, to come this way. This was probably Taimanov's plan, but bishop f5 did not happen. And now if you start running with the pawn, knight g4 check. You can't take the knight, right? It would be a draw. So you better keep the bishop defended. King e6 looks wrong. So I guess we try king g6. The problem is, and this is very similar to what we saw in the drawing, fundamental drawing position, is we keep checking until the king goes to the other side, right? Taking the knight brings kings closer to the pawn, yeah. So we keep checking until the king goes to e6, because the king needs to keep the bishop defended. And now, once the king is there, well, I suppose many moves could draw here. My instinct would go on knight e3. I'm wondering if knight h6. Yeah, I think all of those should draw. Yeah, just this, right? Now bishop h3 would be my only attempt here, probably as white, because the bishop is under attack, and you don't want to allow king g4, which is an immediate draw. So bishop h3 only move. And then I wonder if maybe just knight g4 preventing king f6. Oh, yeah, there's an immediate draw here, knight g2. Bam! Bam! Scandinavian Master! Hey, welcome! Welcome, Team Scandi! Rawr! Yeah, knight g2 immediate draw, right? Do we all agree? What about king f6? Giving away the bishop? You mean in this position where we attack the bishop? Or do you mean previously? Because here I would take the bishop if king f6. Yeah. Then it would be funny. Then I would be playing for the win. I will never win that, but I would be trying to trying to force white into stalemate themselves. Into sorry, self-mate. Anyway, in this position, what about bishop g6, king g? Ah, you want to defend h5? Okay, so after king g4, you're gonna play h5. But I think I'm there. I think I got there. I'm gonna put the king on h6 and move the knight around the board. Try not to be dominated, but still, yeah. Yeah, I'm already there. I suppose probably more useful is to try and attack the pawn after I put my king on h6. But okay, yeah, it seems like a draw. And if bishop h3, knight g2 is an immediate draw, right? We're threatening to take the pawn. If the pawn pushes king g5, if the bishop takes the pawn, king g4. The pawn is collected. Okay, so that was a forcing line to prove that bishop f5 doesn't work. It was all forced. King g5 is an interesting attempt, someone said. Yeah, it's not easy. Not easy because king f knight f3 loses. Knight f7 maybe. Knight f7 and repeat. Yeah, maybe knight f7. And the point is, if you go back, I want to start running. And there's no king g5, so I'm gonna get king f6. Very close to a draw. My king is like probably already in a good position there. And if not, I'm gonna repeat. Like, let's say, if you go back to the same square, I repeat, and if you go to g6, I'm gonna repeat it. I'm gonna do this again and see what you got. Let's say you do this, so knight f7 is not a check. I think I still will play knight f7 and try to run this way. Yeah, so okay, not 100% solved this line, but it feels like it would be a draw. In the game after king e4, Bobby Fischer found the great and only winning move. By the way, in some of these lines that we just saw with king g5, one reason why I wanted to go back to g4 is that, let's say the king is, I don't know, somewhere here. Well, maybe not there, but what I was in the back of my mind, it was the fact that the knight is attacking the bishop, so h4 can't be pushed. That's important. So the bishop is on the right diagonal. The bishop is on the right diagonal, but it doesn't want to be under attack because that freezes the pawn. So bishop put the bishop somewhere else, but not on f5, but rather bishop c8, exclamation mark. Only winning move. Impressive. And this is the power of the long range piece. It's still controlling all the same squares in the same diagonal. It's just completely far away from reach. What's the difference between bishop e6 and bishop c8? Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Bishop e6, let's say we go knight f3. Now, you can immediately see how with the bishop on c8, knight f3 wouldn't be possible, right? With the bishop on c8, you would check, take, and king g5. With the bishop on e6, I can go knight f3. And you have no skewer. So I'm blocking already on h4. That makes your... and also preventing king g5, by the way. So now it's very hard to make progress as white, right? Fischer is decent. Yeah, he was a little bit decent. So bishop c8, preventing knight f3. Fischer, good player or what? And so Taimanov tried king f4, running with the king. Yeah, I'm here. I'm getting there, but you're not getting there. In fact, h4. And yeah, the king is not getting close to the pawn. The pawn is running. The knight is not close to um, controlling any of these squares. So it's a really tough, really tough position for black. That's a quick point. Yeah. So here black could try, I guess, knight g4 check. Taimanov played knight f3. But we probably should have a look at knight g4 check, because that's a move that can come up to mind, right? I don't have analysis for knight g4, but let's see it, because now that I see the position, I may try knight g4, because bishop takes is a draw, so it's worth looking at it. Knight g4 check. White can't take the knight, so maybe king g7, right? Because king g6 will repeat. How about king g7? We're threatening. I mean, we're ready to push, and the problem is the knight is not stable forever on g4. If the pawn is pushed to h5, then bishop takes g4 is a threat. So, so if the knight is not going to be stable forever on g4, then we're not controlling h6 forever. So I guess, yeah, white is threatening to play h5 followed by bishop takes knight, and I'm not sure what else can we do here. I guess we have to move the knight now. Like king g3, h5 is game over. Well, everything is game over at this point, I think. We move the knight h5. Yeah. So king g7 simply. So knight g4 doesn't work. And Taimanov tried knight f3, which forces h5 as well. But Taimanov's idea is to bring the knight to g5. Now, there's good and bad news about having the knight on g5. The good news is it's on a square that cannot be attacked by the bishop. It is defended by the king. It's controlling one of the squares the pawn has to go through. Now, the bad news is we're going to be in zugzwang, very clearly, right? Because at some point, the knight will not be able to move, the king will not be able to move. The opponent's king is already attacking on the knight. It's going to be an easy zugzwang. We already saw how to win with this kind of setup. So Fischer played bishop f5 here. I don't see a problem with just h6 already, but okay, bishop f5. Taimanov said, okay, I can move the knight back and go back to g5 whenever necessary. Fischer said, okay, do it, you have to. Knight g5. And now Fischer played king g6. Nothing wrong with bishop c8 or bishop anywhere, really. Just zugzwang. But yeah, I guess, you know, you can put the bishop here and okay, there's some checks and back to g5. So I guess he moved the king first, but it's the same. King g6. May Fischer wanted to prevent the knight 7 check repetition. Yeah, probably either check on d5 or h7 and then repeat on g5. But of course, it's the same. Knight f3 was played. So, okay, you can get a queen, but I get the bishop. Haha. Yeah, I don't know. Knight f3 equals to resigning, I guess. h7 and knight h4 did not happen. Knight e5 was played. So last hope, I think. Yeah, I guess king h6. King h6 is a draw. Oh yeah, that's funny. So king h6 doesn't win. I think it's the only legal move that doesn't win. But yeah, in the game, king f6 and black resigned. This is a funny situation, right? Because you can take here, and now it's a draw. Knight g6 next. Okay, I need to do a very quick bathroom break, so I'll be back soon in a minute. And we'll keep seeing more examples. In fact, I'm going to show the next position for you, because this is a composition. It's I put the title of Paradoxical study. Okay, it's a paradoxical composition. But I told you earlier about how a knight blocking on a good square, in this case because it's a light square bishop, right? We have a light square bishop. Thanks for the follow, big T-Bone. So we have a light square bishop. The ideal situation for this knight would be to block on a dark square. So we're looking at g7 already, okay? We're looking at a blockade on g7, and the king is already in front of the pawn, so that's good news for the defender, for the defending side. However, we're gonna see how white wins here. And it is connected to what I told you before. Even when blocking on a good square, if you're really close to a corner of the board, the knight can be dominated. The knight lacks squares. In that position we saw earlier, the knight had 6 squares, and there was no way for the king and bishop to control all 6 squares. But now we can already envision that from g7 the knight will only have 4 squares. Okay, so there's going to be a zugzwang here, and it's going to be a beautiful one. So I'll be back in a minute. I'll leave you to this position. It's why to play and win. It's not obvious, but maybe you can start thinking about it, and we'll see it after I'm back. Be right back. Hey, I'm back. So, in this position, Big T-Bone says in this position, white must corral the knight. So he should move king c5 exclamation mark. Indeed, indeed. Yeah, very well spotted, the first move. And mm, yeah, not saying it's obvious how, but when you give freedom to your opponent, to the knight, it usually has chances to find a maneuver to be sacrificed for the pawn. So in this case, the way to win is, yeah, we're gonna keep it under control. We're gonna force the knight to eventually go to the square it wants to go to, to the blockading square on g7. But we're gonna force the knight to go there, and then we're gonna leave it in zugzwang. That's why it's called a paradoxical study, because usually you want the knight away so you can win. We already saw an example of that. But in this case, it's really hard to win unless you put the knight in zugzwang on g7. So it's a funny study. First, you force the knight to the square g7, and then you leave it in zugzwang. So first things first, king c5 indeed. King c5 prevents knight b6. And it also has a threat. Importantly, this king has absolutely no way to go after the g5 pawn, because the bishop is controlling g6. So that's important, because otherwise, otherwise the king could walk into towards the pawn. So because that happens, if we just collect the knight, we just win on the spot. So that's not a question. So king c6 is a big threat right now. King c6 is a threat to dominate the knight, and then after king b7 collect it. So the knight needs to get out of there. Knight c7 is mandatory. There's no other move. Otherwise, just king c6, king b7, collect the knight. So knight c7 is forced. And now, pretty much every move in this study has an exclamation mark. Like this move has an exclamation mark right now. And the move is king d6. Only winning move. King d6, very well, testimony. King d6, forcing the knight to go to e8. And now, this is probably the hardest move of the study. I'm not kidding. It may seem like a natural move, but the reason why king c6 works and king c6 doesn't is not obvious. It's not obvious. Molo Yololi, hey, thanks for the follow. Oh wait, it's 96 here, right? So I'm confused. I'm confusing myself. It's not this move. Never mind. Yeah, here there's 96. I was only calculating the line with 98, which is similar to the main line. Yeah, no, don't mind me. Here there's 96, which is much simpler. Yeah, remove this. So king d6, logical, right? It prevents 96, for example. And importantly, the knight is forced to go to e8, because if it goes to e8, again, king c6 just collects the knight. So knight e8 check, only move. Now, this is the one. This is the comment I made for the previous move. It was meant for this move. This is the tricky move, or at least the difficult one. Because if you don't see the whole line till the end, you can't really figure out whether king e7 or king e6 is the winning move. Or even king d7, which the way I just said it, it's not king d7, but but it would also be a logical move, right? To force the knight to g7. So one of those three moves wins, and the other two don't. And it's not super obvious. King e7, because if king e6, king g7 or king g8. I vote dark square. That's a nice vote, Mostrush. Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if you calculated it or you just thought logically, and it makes a lot of sense. If you tell us there's only one that wins and you give us two light squares and one dark square, it must be the dark square. That's a good logic. Yeah, because of course it will all come down to a zugzwang, as I already announced. So it will be very important whether we're on a dark square or a light square. Yeah, it will make a difference. So yeah, king e7 is the winning move. um, if king e6, Big T-Bone says king g7 or king g8, and I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's a fair point, because we're not really challenging the knight. So let me delete that. I should have said king d7 or king e7, but the way I asked the question, it was very obvious. Okay, so king e7 works, king d7 doesn't, even though it also forces the knight to g7, right? It's the only move, knight g7. And king e7, it's the only move, and here I'm putting quotes to this, because knight c7 can come to mine too. The thing is, knight c7 loses the knight. The knight can't go to c7 because king goes here. Wait a second, king doesn't go there. There's knight d5. And if we go here, we repeat. So actually the way to win here is this. Yeah. Yeah, the knight is really far from checking us, because it's never gonna find a route via d5 to check us, and there are no other routes to check us. So, okay. So that's why knight c7 doesn't work. So both king e7 and king d7 force the knight to g7. One of them wins, the other doesn't, and king e7 is the one that wins. Okay, now we're gonna see why. Knight g7 forced, and now domination. We need to keep the knight trapped, and the knight right now, it's threatening to go install itself on f4, after which the king will get out of h8, because the only way to ever chase that knight away from f4 would be to, go with our king. So we need to prevent knight h5. We need to prevent knight h5, and we obviously want to do it in a way. Yeah, the problem with bishop e2, testifone, is it controls h5, but it loses control of f5. So I guess if we do that, the knight could try the same on h4 instead of f4. So very, very, very nice, Danilo. Bishop g6, bam, preventing. Okay, Danilo says to prevent king h7, which is also a fair point. Basically, bishop g6 is the most forcing move in the position, because we only give black one move, which is king g8, right? We completely dominate the knight. We also keep h7 under control, so king g8 only move. Now, this position would be nice. I mean, the position is nice, but how do we keep making progress? By the way, the reason why king e7 works and king d7 doesn't is because in this position, white only wins if it's white to move. If it was black to move in this position, it would be a draw. And the reason white wins is actually very forcing. We do the check here. Okay. This is bishop f7, very nice. So king f7, king f6, king f7, so black has to move the knight. Yeah, the problem with king f6, let's put it, so the move is bishop f7, as we will see. the problem with king f6 is the king goes to f8, and how do we make progress now? Our bishop doesn't want to lose control of h5, so don't think of bishop h7 because now h5. What else? If we go bishop f7, that would be my guess because of keeping an eye on knight h5. But then there's knight f5, and yeah, this is looking bad because the knight is threatening to go to h4 already, and we can't take it. If we take it, it's a drawn king and pawn versus king, as we all know. So we want to keep this knight trapped here, but we want to keep this king trapped here in this corner. So this is importantly, we have the check, and then after king h7, let's say, then we go king f6. So both the king and the bishop are doing a good job controlling the squares the knight can jump to. Except a second ago, the king was controlling e8 and e6, and the bishop was controlling from g6. It was controlling f5 and h5, and now they switch places in the control of e8 and f5. Now the bishop is the one controlling e8 instead of the king, and the king is controlling f5 instead of the bishop. They're doing a good job there together. So now again, only one move, king h8. How do we win? Very nice. We brought the king closer. The king is on f6 already. But how to win? We can't push the pawn. We can't push the pawn. It gives away the h5 square. King g6. It's tough keeping the knight corralled, but even tougher to get a win while doing it. Yeah. That's why. Yeah, this is a very paradoxical study. Don't expect this to happen in your games. These compositions, I take them with a grain of salt, right? I with a lot of care. They're great to show some nice dynamics of the pieces, but they're not going to happen in your games, okay? But it shows some nice dynamics that it may happen in some other version. This composition is really, really awesome that it works the way it does. So king g6 was proposed by Danilo, which, if this was a pawn, it would be a stalemate, but because it's a knight, you say, hey, it's your turn, zugzwang. You're gonna lose the knight because you have to move the knight. You're gonna lose it. But then black says, no problem. Let me lose it on e6. So bishop takes e6 is a stalemate. Ah! Darn it! And of course knight takes g5 is a no-brainer if the bishop doesn't capture the knight. So this is an immediate draw, king g6. Doesn't work. Darn it. How do we win then? Now, I'm going to give you a hint. I told you g6 doesn't work. But the reason g6 doesn't work is because there's knight h5. That's the only reason, really. If the knight didn't have that square, it would be a zugzwang, right? If the knight couldn't jump to h5. It would be a zugzwang because the king can't move, and the knight wouldn't need to move. So the knight would have to move to a square where it can be captured. So I think that's a very strong hint of what the plan is here. If the knight, we need to control the knight, and right now we're controlling all 4 squares. Now the bishop is controlling these 2 squares. Now if we bring the king to a position where it controls these 2 squares, then g6 wins, right? Does it make sense? Am I crazy, or do you understand what I'm saying? So if we bring the king, a bit hard to figure out to figure it. Okay, so if we bring the king e5, really, what a strange move. Yeah, king e5 is the move. So we need to bring the king to g4 to control those 2 squares, and then we play g6. So for now, the bishop is controlling 3 squares, very importantly. So for now, we need to keep f5 controlled always with the king. So we're going to go around it to the g4 square. And now the path I'm drawing is not precise. We may want to go there like that, or we may want to go like this, or we may want to go like that. We're going to have to figure out how. Well, probably not like that. We don't want to lose control of f5, but we're going to figure out whether we go to e4 or f4. We're going to figure that out, okay? But we want to go to g4, and then on this very same position, except with the king on g4, we're going to play g6, and black is going to be in zugzwang. Funny, right? Now, importantly, the king has to be on h8, because if the king is on h7 when our king is on g4, we don't have that zugzwang we're asking for. We would play g6 check, king h6, and black will be like, so what? So whether the king is on h7 or h8 is important. That's why the color is important. Anyway, king e5 indeed. King e5, and again, because we're controlling all the jumps of the knight, black only has one move. That's logical, king h7. Now, which way do we go? King e4 or king f4? Remember, we want to arrive at g4. So after king g4, our opponent plays king h8, so we can play g6. So we would like to play king g4 right now, for example. Right now, or in 2 moves. So not on the next move. And therefore, we go king e4, not king f4. You know what I mean? Yeah, so we go king e4. Always keep f5 under control. That's important. King h8, now king f4, king h7, and now king g4. Exactly. And now king h8, g6, and black resigns. Super easy, right? Super easy. That's how you usually win your games, right? This is a very beautiful study, and it shows, again, it shows some of the concepts we've seen, how the knight can be in zugzwang, but it shows how difficult it is sometimes. And well, again, I don't expect this to happen in your games, but well, the concepts are there. Studies. Hey, thanks for the follow, Don Dorma. So yeah, these compositions usually show very extreme examples of those concepts. So we see an extreme zugzwang here, very unlikely to happen in games, but it's very instructive, definitely, and how sometimes you need to be careful. And of course, you can still go king f4 here, and the position would still be winning, but you need to, again, triangulate back to get to the right position. I will look for the way to place my bishop 3 squares far from the knight to control. Yeah, the bishop on d7 would do such job, but yeah, this study is impressive because we really need the king and the bishop very close. So we not only dominate the knight but also the king. We're also keeping the king trapped in the corner in this case. So very extreme example where we need the bishop to be close to also dominate the king, because if not for that fact, black would still be in a great defensive setup. You have the king in front of the pawn, you have the knight blockading on a square that's the opposite of the bishop. That's usually a draw. As I said earlier, that's 99% of the times a draw. So, so in this case, only by a miracle, white wins. But that miracle is very beautiful. Seeing the fact that the king must first circumvent f5 before playing g6 is something only the most gifted would see on their own. Well, I think if you see everything else, you will see that, because everything else is also tough to find. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was an interesting example. I'm gonna show now. We've been streaming for a couple hours already, right? So it's probably I'm getting 2 hours 20 minutes. I'm probably getting to the point where I'm gonna finish the session soon and leave many more examples for session 2. Again, my plan for this to do 4 sessions at least, 2 where the bishop wins. This is the first one, and that is the villain version, because of course I'm team knight. So we're seeing how to defend with the knight. We're seeing how to win with the bishop. Boo, bishops, boo. So anyway, that's the plan, and then we're gonna have 2 other sessions for winning with the knight. And so we're gonna finish this session, I think, with these examples of 2 pawns, bishop and 2 pawns versus knight, where it would seem as usually should be a win, but we're gonna see that the knight has some defensive chances. And the first example we're gonna see is a perfect blockade example, which is this one we see in front of our eyes now. It's a game, sorry, Georgiev against Van Veli. Let me see the tags. 1997. Yeah. We got a raid. Hey, thank you. Thank you. It's always dying for the raid. I hope you had a great stream, and welcome raiders. We're about to finish our endgame session very soon, but that doesn't mean I'm done streaming. Okay, I'll probably switch to playing some chess and having some drinks and something like that. I think that's the plan. Nice class. I have to prepare the kids. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, have a nice Christmas, and thank you for being there, Danilo. Yeah, see you later. All right. So yeah, this endgame. I don't know. What do you think about this position? I didn't even tell you who has the turn. I didn't even tell you if it's white or black to move. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because black has a perfect blockade. There's absolutely nothing to do here as white. Absolutely nothing. So this is the perfect situation. As the defender, when the opponent has the bishop, you have the knight, and you're defending. The ideal setup is king in front of the pawn. In this case, there are 2 pawns, but they're connected. So the ideal situation is king in front of one of them, knight in front of the other, and that blockade to happen, of course, in the opposite color to the bishop. And this is it. This is an example. I look at this position and I see white can't win. I don't know why these grandmasters played on for 10 more moves. It's like too obvious to me. It's like dark square blockade. There's nothing to do for the light square bishop. Obviously, as we've seen and we've said already, the situation would be different if we're near a corner of the board where the knight doesn't have many squares. But in this case, of course, the knight has 8 squares from this position. Like, I mean, the more it has, the most you can have. Had to figure out how to switch over from my stream to yours. Oh, nice. Oh, thank you from the raid. Yeah, thank you for that. What were you doing chess always? Always. Sorry, I was just reading your nickname there. were were you doing chess also? Yes. Okay. I hope you had a great stream. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So yeah, I think I just said it like 2 minutes ago, but I'm gonna say it again. We're doing endgame session about to end now. Knight versus bishop. We're starting positions where the bishop is the winning side, and of course that's something we don't like because we love knights on this stream. Thanks for the shout out, Saltigo. I did accept. I kept losing. That happens. No worries. I'm gonna switch to playing now, so hopefully I'll be on that train too. Okay, so again, perfect blockade. We have many squares, no problem. Then the game continued. It was white to move, and the game continued. King g4, knight d3, and knight d3 draws, of course. Knight e2 draws, of course. Knight g2 draws, of course. And those are the three moves that lead to a draw. So the only reason I'm showing this is because, well, we have to show an example of a perfect blockade because, you know, we have to. But there's nothing important to know. Once you get the blockade, the only thing you need to do is to keep it, right? As simple as that. Just keep the blockade. Never ever move the king. And move the knight back and forth. Move the knight out of the blockading square and back to it. So when you move it out, it still controls the square. It still controls f4. Then on the next move, you move it back. The bishop can never challenge the knight. The bishop can never chase the king away. Just a draw. We will always have squares. The reason those three are the moves that draw here is because those three are the moves where we, you know, the squares where we can move the knight without it being taken. As simple as that. So yeah, knight goes there. Next move, knight goes back. So white tried to control different squares, like now it's controlling e2. The knight went back to d3, and now, yeah. Now the bishop controls d3, well, we jump to a different square. Yeah. And knight back. Thanks for the follow, it's always dying. What if king g3 instead? It doesn't matter. There's always going to be a square. In this case, g6 or h5. Like, in fact, king g3 was played in this position. Probably you said it on the previous position, but it's the same. In this case, he chose the check. Doesn't really matter. The knight went back. It's just back and forth. If you think about it, the only way to make to leave black in zugzwang, which would be the only way to break the blockade, right? When there's a blockade on the color of your bishop, you can chase them away by attacking with the bishop. When there's a blockade on the opposite color, the only way to break the blockade is by a zugzwang. We've seen a couple examples already of zugzwang. In this case, a zugzwang would mean that this king and this bishop would need to control all these squares. I'm gonna color them. And I'm not coloring this one because the pawn is already controlling that one, okay? So those squares. You need to find a way for the bishop and the king to control all those squares. Good luck. Good luck finding a way. Yeah. It's funny because there's a way to control all but one, right? If you put the bishop here and the king here, for example. Yeah, almost there, but there's gonna be 96 there. Who said bishops was better for endgames? I'll give you 2 pawns and still draw. Exactly. That's why I brought this example, because I'm team knight. Team knight. Yeah, we like knights. Bishops are better in certain scenarios, not this one. This is a perfect blockade. So yeah, just a draw. And unfortunately, this does not happen every time. We're going to show another example where white is actually winning. I thought this was from a game, but I don't have the tag names of the players. I think I need to check this because this is one is probably in the book. Um, anyway, this curious though, if you reverse pieces, does the bishop blockade as effectively? Um, well, we're gonna get there because yeah, again, we're doing now this session and the next session. We're gonna do two sessions on the villain, I mean the bishop being the winning side, and then we're gonna do another two with the knight being on the strong side, and we're gonna bring examples of that: knight and pawn versus bishop, knight and two pawns versus bishop. But my general feeling is uh, the bishop is not as good, at least in a scenario like this. It's not as good blockading because the knight can always switch color, can always target both colors, while the bishop can only. So the main reason why that was a perfect blockade is because that bishop can never ever target those dark squares. So the bishop can never ever chase the knight or push the king away. If you reverse the pieces, that's not going to be saving the defending side because the knight will always be able to target those blockading squares. So it's a very interesting question because it keeps talking about these strengths and weaknesses that we're talking about, and these are the important concepts to remember. Knights can be put in zugzwang more easily than bishops, but knights can target any square, while bishops can only target one color. So perfect blockade with the knight, possible, easy draw. Perfect blockade with the bishop, not so easy, especially against a knight. Obviously against a bishop, it's a different story. Personally, I always never liked having the bishop as my last piece. That's interesting. I mean, I'm team knight, obviously, and I've shown that a lot. Hey, that was a donation, right? Testy Funny donated 10 euros, and there's a message there that it's so small I can't read. Merry Endgames. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. I heard a sound earlier, and it may have been a donation earlier, but I wasn't sure what the sound was, so I'm not sure. Uh, but I need to make my OBS screen bigger so I can read that. Sorry about that. And thank you so much. I appreciate the donation. Merry Endgames Christmas. Okay, thank you so much for that. That was a lot of testimony. Testimony, sorry. And we actually have some perks for subs and or donations. And I think your donation probably qualifies already because of the amount. So yeah, feel free to take any of these perks we have, like the free lesson or picking up. Actually, let me check because that's sub 1, but we have more. We have sub 2 probably, like for a $10 donation. Yeah. So yeah, pick any of those, please. People usually don't redeem these perks, but they're there for you because I appreciate the support. All right. So great questions, Altigo. Thank you for that. We're gonna see the reverse scenario, but yeah, this perfect blockade, perfect blockade, like this draw and nothing you can do about it. That's only with the knight. The bishop will always have to be worried about the knight chasing it away. That's why knights are better than bishops. Yeah. So we see another example. This one. I think I'm gonna show this one and one more. Yeah, I'm gonna show this position and then another more, and that's gonna be it for this session. Happy to get one lesson sometime. You're free. Yeah, sure. So drop me a message on, well, if you want, only if you want. Don't be forced to do that. But if you want, you can join our Discord and we can talk there, or just drop me a message on Twitch. Just send me a DM on Twitch, and yeah, we'll find a moment for sure. No worries. Especially now, I'm on vacation until January 3rd. By the way, thanks, C Dallas. Hey, thanks for the beats. So yeah, these weeks are perfect for me to schedule more lessons and everything. Okay, back to the position. This is from a game. It's black to move, obviously, because if it was white to move, we would take the knight. So it's black to move, and this would be a draw if we had a perfect blockade, but we're really far from having a perfect blockade. First of all, the pawns are on dark squares. What that means, well, it's a light square bishop. That means that we don't want to block them the way they are right now. We don't want to block on light squares. No, we don't want to block on dark on light squares. We want to block on dark squares, but for that, things have to happen. The pawns have to be pushed, for example, which we may or may not be able to force, and then we will want to block on those two squares, probably h8 and g7. And okay, many things have to happen for that, and white will not allow that. So in this game, knight g4 check was tried. Makes sense. The knight will go somewhere else. King g3, obvious. And now this is interesting because this was from a real game. Again, I don't know why I lost the name of the players. I will have to check this and put them back on the study. If this was me, I would probably play 95 here, and maybe 97 next. I don't know. A logical move, right? Or 93. But of course, white was very resourceful in this game, even though they ended up losing. And we will see how white needed some accuracy, but the fact that there's no perfect blockade set up yet, makes white have the upper hand here, and white should be winning, and white won in the end. But we will see that it's not as easy. In fact, black tried all the resources here. For example, black played the obvious move, knight h6 here, which, it's always nice to see this kind of moves. So we also get inspired, and we use them in our own games. And we already talked today about the wrong color bishop, or wrong color corner, or wrong color, or wrong, and just wrong. And black realizes that h8 is the wrong color for this bishop. So if white takes here, which of course white didn't do, play bishop d4 check over the board. Just as sneakily play bishop d4 check. That's a good suggestion, Kuro. Yeah, typical. That would be funny, if you have the wrong corner, and you drop the piece out of the board, and you put it back on a different color. Just not on d4. It would be too obvious. Just on e3. Just on e3 for now. Yeah. Right. Okay. So white did not take, because the main idea here is, now this is the wrong corner, and we know this is a draw. In fact, if it was me over the board, I would not even take back. I would go king h8 and say, hey, this is a draw. And I know this is a draw. It doesn't matter how many h pawns you have. This is a draw. So yeah, taking on h6, very suspicious. So black played knight h6, saying, okay, what you got? I have a perfect blockade. Yay! I have a blockade on dark squares, because you cannot even take my knight. And white said, stop talking. No, just kidding. White also talked. White said, okay, I'll take my time. It's fine. King f4. Knight f7. Now, white needs to make progress, and for that, at some point, white will need to push some pawns, more likely the h pawn. Every move wins here, I think, including Including, no, not including h5. h5 important, not to push h5. Who can tell me why not h5? Just double checking the concepts here. The concepts you already know. Why not h5? Why would h5 be a draw? Knight takes e5. Yes, exactly. We just said wrong corner. So we need, the knight went to f7, setting up another trick. The trick is if h5, knight takes e5. So the knight is attacking g5, and we need to be able to capture with the h pawn, because then it's not a draw. Then it doesn't matter the wrong color. So here white did not push h5, just push, played bishop c4, which makes a lot of sense. It's saying, hey, Mr. Knight, please stay away from my g5 pawn because I want to push h5. Okay, so get away from f7, please. And the knight said, okay, I'll go back to h6. I'm cozy there. And now, many moves win. h5 works already, but white said, you know what? Let me first dominate your knight. Just, I'm just gonna put all my pieces in the best squares, and then eventually I'll push h5. I'm not in a hurry here, right? I'm gonna play h5. No worries. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna play h5, but first let me put the bishop here, because right now your knight has no moves, so you better move your king. And black said, okay, but that's no problem. I'll put the king on g6. It's better than on g7, right? Push the king up. Okay. So white plays king e5. King e5, I guess, required some calculation, maybe not a big calculation, but you're allowing king h5, but I guess king f6. So black decided not to go into that and came back to g7, which makes a lot of sense. And now white is just, this is are perfect already, so pushed h5 finally. And king h8. King can't go to g6 anymore, so king goes back. All right. King f6, and this seems like a walk in the park already, right? It seems like white is about to just win immediately. But you need to be careful. King h7, only logical move. What do we do? Taking is a draw. We know that. We can maybe play this check. Yes. Does g6 work? Who knows? Does it work? It does, right? Some people can't win this position without the pieces. Right. Okay, yeah, that's a problem. Push until queening. That's a good strategy, yeah. So g6 happened, indeed. g6 happened, and king h8 is the only move. And this is almost, this would be a perfect blockade for black if the king was not preventing something blocking on g7. Like, like when the king was there, king g7, perfect blockade. So it was important to improve the king first and then push g6. And now king h8. And g7 wins. G7 wins? Yes, g7 wins, but it was not played in the game. In the game, king g5 was played, which I like. Which I like. You know me. I like stopping everything and and not rushing the winning moves. But yeah, I think g7 wins because king h7 is the only move, and then you can just play any move, like any move on this diagonal. Bishop h3, bishop d7, bishop c8, and it's a zugzwang, right? So this would have won. This would have won. But in the game king g5 was played, although it allows king g7, yeah, I don't like it that much now. Yeah, so I guess in the game it wasn't that clear. Now bishop d5 was played. So I guess white thought this is a nice zugzwang as well because I'm controlling these squares. You like this more? Yeah, I understand that this looks like a zugzwang, but black tried king h8, and it's a good try. It's a good try. Because king takes knight is a stalemate. Rawr. Okay. So yeah, we're not quite there. And went for the other plan. Well, went for bishop c4, saying okay, go back to g7, and now bishop back to e6. So some triangulation there. And after king h8, finally went for the other plan. Yes, king f6. And now yes, right? Now black is in zugzwang. Now there's no move for black. In fact, black could have resigned here, but I like that they played one more move. You know, I'm a fan of team. I'm team never resign as well. We need an emote for that. Never resign, rar. And black did the best move here. And if you ask a Stockfish or the database, they will tell you black has 4 legal moves, right? And the 4 of them lose. We need an emote to always resign. Black has four losing moves, 4 legal losing moves. But I'm team never resign. If you figure out what's the best move here of all the losing moves, your chess will improve. That's my because you win or you learn. Now, here you have the loss already. But let's try to learn. Let's try to make the exercise to find the best move. And I think black found the best move here. Knight f7. Rawr. Because out of 1, 2, 3 captures, 2 of them are stalemate. so bishop takes is a stalemate. King takes is a stalemate. So the game was pawn takes and black resigned. Okay. But you gotta try. You gotta try. You never know. I don't know if white was in time trouble. That might have justified the move a bit more. Yeah, nice try. Yeah, that was a good try. All right. So I said I was gonna show one more. King h7. Oh yeah, that's a good point, Kudo. He could have tried that, right? King h7 and then promotion stalemate. Boom. Yeah, that would have been funny. But yeah, no, never resigned. Boo, he resigned here. Boo. Okay, just one more example. Last example of today. This session was nice. All this work for nothing, yeah. Promote as rook. Yeah, that's the best move because it's checkmate on the next move. Yeah, bishop or knight also wing, but it's not checkmate on the next move. Yeah, promote to rook is the best move. I was thinking whether there was a way to still get a queen, like moving the king or the bishop, but yeah, it's not made in two. Okay. So, last but not least, we're going to see an example here where what we have is 2 pawns, but they're not connected. Okay, we saw how 2 connected pawns, the knight has some hopes to have a perfect blockade. With 2 separated pawns, it's much harder because obviously the knight is more clumsy when it comes to long range. But there's still some chances. There's still some chances. It offers winning chances, of course, to the side with the bishop. I It's hard to generalize, but I'm gonna say that in general, they're very good winning chances. That in general, this is winning this kind of endgame. But it's tricky, and in fact, what we're going to see here is an example from Kelechevich versus Fioramonti, where the game ended in a draw. So we're gonna see some mistakes here, okay? But basically, what we're going to see is that it's not easy. It's not obvious. But yeah, it should be. Um, there should be some winning chances. Now, what we have here is a position where it's white to move. White is the defending side. And the good news for white is black's king is not helping the pawns a lot. So we're, closer to annoy those pawns. And, if we collect one of them, then it may just be a draw, an immediate draw. So that's good news that we have the king and the knight near one of them, and the opponent's king is far, and the other pawn is not very advanced. So there are definitely some drawing chances here, but obviously they're winning chances because it's bishop pawns on both sides. And in fact, this position is objectively a win for black, but black didn't win. So let's see how it went. So white played king d4. I think it's a very, very logical first move. I throw beer cans at the wall when I lose to stalemate. When I lose to stalemate, I mean when you stalemate, I guess. Yeah, I get really mad with those, but it happens. It happens. One of my worst games ever, and that's always gonna be there in my mind. And actually, it affects how I play endgames nowadays over the board, because that was such a traumatic experience for me. So this game was so far my longest game ever. It was like 5 hours and a bit. Something between 5 hours and 5 hours and a half, which is a lot when you start with the usual time control of 90 minutes plus 30. That's what I usually play over the board. So games are usually between 3 and 4 hours. Sometimes if they go too long, are 4 hours, 4 hours and something. But this was like 5 hours, a bit more, a bit over that. Those moons are beautiful. Thank you, Mate. Mate in Mexico. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, carnal. Sorry. I hope you're from Mexico. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, this traumatic experience. Vamos. This game, it was a game where out of the opening I got an advantage. I collected material. Then in the middle game, I blundered into an equal endgame, and I tried to make it interesting or unbalanced. So in the end, I ended up with 2 pieces against the rook, and I was a pawn down, and it was very complicated. And as I said, it was a very, very long game, like 5 hours ish. That means that we played a lot of the endgame on the increment, and the game was 100 and many moves. It was so long, but it felt like I had the smallest advantage, the tiniest advantage, and I kept trying to convert. It was a grinding game. And in the end, in the last move, I blundered a trick. So imagine, like, I blunder out of the. So I got an advantage. They blunder into an equality, slightest of advantages. I grind all the game, and then in the 5th hour, I blundered a stalemate trick. Yeah, and it was a draw, and it was painful. At that point, I was 1900, I think 19 something. My opponent was 1800 something. It was, I was slight favorite, but not by much, and it was really painful. That was my most painful draw, not win over the board. It was more painful than many losses I've ever had. Yeah, that's always in the back of my mind when I play this kind of endgame over the board. I'm like, okay, like I'm not thinking what's the winning move or what's the strongest move. What I'm thinking is what's the uh, what's the blunder. Which way I'm gonna spoil this? That's what I'm thinking. That's what's in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, I'm gonna try to find the best attempt, and if I don't win, I don't win. That's fine. But what I don't want is to make a blunder, spoil it. I'm trying to avoid that kind of pain. And yeah. Anywho, about this position, King d4. So that forces c3, right? Only move to preserve the pawn. Um, Obviously, knight takes c3 is a losing endgame. We all know that because we're masters of king and pawn versus king endgames, and we know how lost that is, right? No question there, right? Right? If anyone has any doubts, we can see the line. But with this king on c3, after takes, with that king on c3 and this king coming to help the pawn, it's going to be an easy win for black. So in the game, white played the only move. We need to keep this pawn, from promoting. So king d3, and black has hopes because one of these two guys has to be tied to stopping this pawn, and as long as the pawn is defended once, and because the king and pawn versus king endgame is lost, white cannot take the pawn. So black has some hopes of keeping this here and try to make some progress here. So then either the knight or the king will be distracted, and the knight only or the king only will not be able to stop us on the g file. So eventually both will need to help the knight and the king, and so the knight cannot will not be able to split and help both on the c file and the g file. So black definitely has winning chances here and hopes to win. And in fact, the position is winning objectively, but here black blundered. At this very moment, black blundered, and it's not obvious. So I think it's a good example to learn. Black played what it looks like a very, very logical move, a move that I would consider myself. But to be honest, I would also consider the winning moves because they're logical. Like, what are the candidate moves here? G5. Testifony says G5, and G5 would definitely be a candidate move here, and in fact is one of the winning moves. So, yeah, G5 was winning. Yeah. So was King F6, by the way. King F6 and G5 were winning, and one would think, what's more natural than G5 and King F6, right? So, yeah. So G5 and King F6 were winning, and the idea is going to be this basically the same. I mean, King F6 is to prepare G5, and G5 you're probably going to follow up with King F6. So I have some analysis here of the line with G5. Maybe we can follow. G5 here I have knight d4 or knight c7 analyzed. Yeah, I guess they're both interesting. Both lines look interesting. For example, knight c7, g4, knight d5. Very, very nice, right? Very nice. Attack the bishop, put pressure on the pawn, and now look at the winning. Bishop a5 wins, okay, but look at this, g3, bam, also winning. Very direct. Yeah, bishop a5 wins, big T-bone, but g3 wins. And g3 is more direct. Yeah, no, you don't have time to take on before. So you have to go knight f4 here. And now look at this, king e7. What everybody would do. We're gonna walk, because we couldn't access e6. That's why king e7. We're gonna walk over there. So the line that's analyzed here, and of course none of this is forced. I mean, the line goes knight g2, but of course you could go king c2 or any other waiting move. But I guess what's going to happen is the same. Once the king is tied to defending this pawn and the knight is tied to blocking this pawn, uh, black can basically do anything they want. So let's say this, this, and now once the king is close enough, bam, c2. King takes c2, king e4. Yeah. King d1, king f3, h4, king f2. And the line ends here because we want to control from a stable position. This is not a stable square because it's the color of the bishop. So that knight will be chased away, black will win. Yeah. That's one line with g5. Then I have this knight e4 line with g5 also. Oops, with g5 knight e4, another attempt, which is interesting because I think g4. I'm not sure if it wins here. It may still win, but bishop d6. Look at this line, allowing king takes c3, and even though I have analyzed here the line king c2, knight c2, which makes no sense to me. I think the critical would be king takes c3. Well, actually, king takes c3 is obvious. Never mind. Yeah, that's what bishop d6 is a nice move because of this. Yeah. Right. And this is a win. Because we're masters of this king and pawn versus king, we know that's a win. So, yeah, that's why bishop d6 doesn't allow knight takes c3, and that's why the line I have analyzed is knight c2, and now bishop e5. So improving the bishop, and then you bring the king e4. Well, this is a combative line. Look at this. The knight is overloaded. Yikes. King d3, g3, king e2. Yeah. The knight can't stop both. So the knight goes to one, so the king can stop the other, but black's king is entering. Knight e1, yay! King e4, yay! Yeah, this is game over. The bishop will be able to control e1, so the knight will not be able to control both. Yeah. Okay, so I have those analyses there that are interesting about the g5 line. Sorry, here. So g5 was winning. King f6 was winning. The move played in the game is a draw. Now, this example is important or is interesting because not only we're seeing that the bishop has great winning chances with split pawns and so on, but we're also going to see king e6 question mark. We're also going to see, because we are team knight, we're going to see how some positions like this that are really desperate can still be saved. So that's important to me. King e6, blunder. And now white has a draw. Amazing. Amazing. And the drawing move was played in the game, so congratulations to Kilichevich, who found, this is more or less a normal move to play, 94 check. And yeah, Testifoni got it as well, 94. Now, king e5 would be a very bad move, right? Because there's a fork there. And this reminds me of the how did we call it? The barriers we built with knights, which we're gonna see probably on session 3. But we saw already on knight versus pawn, we saw some barriers where we control some squares, but we also prevent, because of tactics, we prevent the king from getting to other squares. El Panaisa, welcome. Thanks for the follow. We're about to finish this session, this endgame session, and I'll switch to playing some tournaments probably. Anyway, the game, of course, King e5 was not played because of the fork, so King f6 was tried. And it's funny how a move ago, when the knight was on b5, King f6 was winning. Sorry, King from f7 to f6 was winning. Now it went like this, and because the knight improved, now this position is a draw with the King on f6. And the reason why is only because of this move that comes now. This is probably the single most important move of this endgame, and it has to do with domination. And I think you can find it. So I'm gonna quiz you here. White to move and draw. I would say white to move and collect a pawn. Knight f3, no. I'm putting the arrow on the board for a reason. But no, knight f3 is not the move. Won't spoil. Saltigo knows it. He knows the answer. White can collect a pawn immediately. Well, I mean, not immediately. I mean, on the next move, let's say, or in a couple moves. Probably the next move. I'm gonna put this one in red because that's not the move. 92. 92 is not the move either, because let's go back 1 second. As we already discussed, knight takes c3 is losing. That king and pawn versus king endgame is losing. So in this position, going knight 2 doesn't really threaten to take that pawn. It would be a losing endgame. Like a puzzle, find the most forcing moves. Yeah. And there's no way to put that king in check, so what else can we do? That's forcing. And it has to do with domination. My favorite endgame theme. Domination. Living in a happy nation. I think one thing I'm gonna do, speak of New Year's goals. One thing I used to be good at, I never tried it in English, but I think I could be good at, is changing lyrics. Well-known songs. You know, I love karaoke, I love singing. And I love writing, so writing new lyrics for well-known songs. And I think Domination is a clear one that I should write. Yeah. Okay. What's the move? How do we... Maybe you have to spoil it, Saltigo. Nobody's finding the move. Why to play and draw? Why to play and find a move that attacks something? Let me put it that way. Find a move that attacks something. It's a knight move. Yes. It's a knight move. It attacks something. that something probably has to move. Attack the bishop, but yes, attack the bishop. Attack the bishop. You're so close. You're so close. Nice six, Mate in Mexico. Nice six indeed. So, yeah, when you said 93, the reason I painted the arrow was to make sure that you were not referring to knight c6. You know, sometimes you get, especially in endgames, you get the coordinates reversed. So I was trying to, maybe you were referring to the right move just with the wrong coordinate. That's why I painted the move to make it obvious. Orale. So yes, knight c6. Knight f5 attacks. Knight f5 attacks nothing. What? I was really meaning a 3. Okay. So yeah, knight c6 attacks the bishop and also dominates. It doesn't fully dominate the bishop, okay? It's not like the bishop doesn't have squares, but it doesn't have squares on the diagonal that it wants to have squares, because the bishop wants to defend the pawn, but we're controlling all the rest of the diagonal. It's not a big diagonal, really. Bishop has two diagonals, a long one and a short one, and we're dominating the short one. And yeah, either you move the bishop and we collect c3, or we take the bishop and then it's going to be a draw. So in the game, bishop c5 was played. But what happens if you decide, okay, you know what? I'm going to let you take the pawn, the bishop, because you're never going to win with a knight. So that's going to be my winning attempt. You can't win, but I'm still going to try to, because before you block the pawns and so on, I'm going to try to win, because I know the king and pawn versus king is winning. So I'm going to try my best and promote this pawn, right? I'll let you take that. Then I'm going to push, or I don't know, let's say I'm going to push. There's no way you win this, right? We can even take here. And we all know, because we've seen it. Did we do a session on that? I'm not 100% sure, but I think we did. We know how a knight draws against the pawn, so we don't even need the king here to draw, okay? Anyway, here black needs to save the bishop, yeah. Bishop moves, king collected the pawn, and g5 now. Now, black still has some winning chances. It's not like the game is over, because the king is not exactly in front of the pawn yet, although it's close. And this knight is not on the best spot, because right now these squares are under black's control. So yeah, okay, black has some hopes there. Timon, thanks for the follow. Yeah, thank you, Saltigo. Thanks for that. Happy holidays too. Yeah, and white here could have started running the king. That's what I would have done, probably. King d3. Like, yeah, that's the most natural. And it's drawing, okay? It's a draw. It's enough. But here white played king c4, saying, okay, you know what? If you let me, I take your bishop, and then it's going to be a draw anyway. So winning the tempo, but in the end, it went to d3. So bishop e6, king d3. Hi. I'm like a minute away from finishing the stream, if you can wait. No, I'm saying I'm a minute away. Okay, give me a minute, guys. Be right back. No, I'm gonna keep streaming, but I'm gonna change. But 1 second. And I'm back, apparently. Anyway, let's finish this. So, yeah, king d3, g4 was tried, king e4, g3, Good try. I mean, the pawn is going to be defended by the bishop, but it's not going to keep pushing forward. So yeah, king f3, good move. And oh, wait a second, I'm misreading this. Let me go back. Sorry. Yeah, after king e4, king g5. Sorry. Yeah, that makes more sense. Now knight 5 was tried. Yeah, bishop. That line was stupid. So in the game, it makes more sense to bring the king. So the king came. Oops, king g5, knight 5. Now knight takes g4 is a threat of an immediate draw. So g3 has had to be played. And now, very importantly, king f3 was played. And I say very importantly because, for example, a way to lose this would be to play knight f3 check. King f3 is the only drawing move. It's the most logical move. I think nobody would play something else, but okay, you never know. Knight f3 would have been lost. Yeah. Now we would like to play knight to g2. Right? Knight to g2, draw. But we don't have knight to g2. So knight to e1, getting there. Bishop a5, knight g2, bishop d2, domination. Maybe knight to g2 wouldn't be winning either. Yeah, because I thought king h3, king f3, but yeah, never mind. This would have been a nice way. We've seen, remember the study we've seen with the king on the corner, the bishop here? It's the same position, really. And the king here, sorry. The beautiful study we've seen before. It's kind of the same situation. We're dominating the knight the same way. Anyway, going back to the game. In the game, of course, king f3 was played. And after king h4, king g2, and bishop c7, important, a draw was declared. But I think, yeah, in this position, basically, you're never going to move your king. And the plan is to just keep jumping around with the knight. Just be careful not to lose the knight. And it's a draw, easy draw. There's no way to be chased away from the g2 square. And so that was a draw. And we've seen, so what we have seen today were examples of bishop winning against the knight. Just bring the knight to e2. Yeah, fair enough. Bring the knight to e2, e4, f5, and just take on g3. Good point. Or bring the knight to h2. It's the wrong corner also. Anyway, so this is it for the endgame session of today. I hope it was instructive. We learned basically how bishop is very powerful. We knew that. We haven't seen all the power of the bishop though. We have seen only examples of bishop and pawn versus knight. We've seen some extreme examples, and then bishop and two pawns versus knight. On the next session, we're going to see the whole power of the bishop, okay? As I said, we're going to explore, the plan at least is 2 sessions of bishop being the winner, and then another 2 of knight being the winner, as it should be, because we're team knight. But on session 2 of bishop, on the next day, which probably will happen in the following days, very likely on the next week, we're going to see the real power of the bishop, because we're going to see examples of bishop versus knight where we have more pawns on the board. Okay, we're going to see bishop and 3 pawns versus knight and 2 pawns. We're even going to see bishop and 3 pawns versus knight and 3 pawns. We're going to see examples where the material is equal, but the bishop still has the upper hand because of an outside pass pawn or things like that. So in that session, the next one, we're going to see the real power of the bishop, because the bishop is really powerful the more pawns there are on the board, and especially if they're on both sides of the board. We're going to see very nice examples of the bishop being, I don't want to say the good guy, because we know the bishop is not the good guy. The bishop is the villain. But we need to know how to fight against it, because we're team knight. And we're going to see that next day. And then we're going to have probably another couple sessions because we're gonna need those for knight being the most powerful. So I'm finishing this here. I'm gonna